In the years I've been riding motorcycles, I've heard from several people this old saying, the best bike is the one you've got. Now, while I think that could be applied to crawlers as well, the best crawler is the one you have. If you haven't got any yet and you're about to convert some money into one, well, that's a good question, and hopefully I've got some useful answers for you. Today I have two kits. Both of these had to be built. Both of these cost about the same. They were both 530 Australian dollars roughly. This is of course the Gmade GS02F, and almost everyone will recognize the Traxxas TRX4 Sport. Both of these have the same wheelbase. A similar design, although this has the full tray and this just has the Truggy kind of rear. Now their tires, they're both OEM tires, they're both really, really good. In my recent tire performance series, these were the very best. And these performed really well, especially in wet weather. So you get good rubber from the get-go. You get to choose your own motor, receiver and servo or servos, just steering, and in this case you've got steering and gear change. One is heavier than the other. The GS02F is about 400 grams lighter than the TRX4. And of course the GS02F has 14% overdrive out of the box. And it's achieved through the transmission, which is a very reliable way to do it. The TRX4 Sport doesn't have overdrive, but you do have the option of buying overdriven front gear, underdriven rear gear. It's never as good as being able to use the transmission, but you do have the option. Yes, I have my choice of electronics in a kit, but in unmodified form apart from that, the GS02F is the only vehicle that's actually completed all 6 of my problems, my test problems. Oh, wow. Oh, that's the end of my channel. Close it all down. The TRX4 Sport is very good, but possibly without overdrive in the front, there's a disadvantage here. Neither of the vehicles comes with beadlock wheels, so you need to provide your own. I'm actually using the Sendero HD plastic beadlocks on this for now, and that keeps the whole vehicle light. Your aftermarket parts support for the Traxxas is very well established. The TRX4 platform has been around for 3 or 4 years now, and there is a lot of aftermarket stuff available. But arguably the GS02F doesn't need aftermarket products as much. It is just so capable out of the box. The one glaring exception to that is what's underneath this diff cover. The cast gears are of a poor enough quality that it becomes an Achilles heel of the whole rig. These things have a reputation for being nearly bulletproof. I've run 4S brushless through this. I know others, even some famous YouTubers, run up to 6S brushless systems through the stock transmission and the stock portals. The entire drivetrain from motor to wheel is really, really good these days, and you expect it to be good these days. So then when you have cast gears in the otherwise machined steel transmission on the GS02F, the cast diff gears really let the whole thing down. If there's one aftermarket thing I'd like to see for this thing, it'd be that. If you have no crawlers and you aren't really interested in the comp scene, but you want to just drive, this is an easy decision between these two. Not having overdrive is an advantage, I would argue, in that case. And I mean, look, they're both pretty, okay? They're both pretty models, but this is a brilliant trail truck. It also comes with, crucially, shielded bearings. You've got rubber booted bearings. So this thing really can go straight into the water with minimal maintenance required. This, you're gonna have real issues if it gets wet until you replace those bearings with a Plague bearings or Fast Eddy or even Boca bearings if you want to spend a bit more. There are good bearings available, but you need to replace the stock ones because they're naked, they're unshielded, which means you get water ingress, ruins the bearings. So this can handle a shower, and you've seen from my test this has been driven in the wet, but not underwater. This thing you can submarine. As long as you get radio signal, it'll do it. The waterproofing on both is very good. Apart from the bearings, it's as good as the TRX4 Sport in my opinion. Both the receiver boxes are very, very good. They're well sealed, dual rubber. Now the GS02F is slightly better actually. So it's really let down by those bearings. The transmission on this is very good. I have no issues with the 2-speed transmission in the TRX4 platform. The Sport is a single speed, but if you were to get that dual speed transmission, they're both very good, no troubles there. Of course you get the cantilever suspension, in this. Now if you want full details of either of these trucks, I've got a 3-part review of the Sport, and I have a single but detailed review of the GS02F. Now I've replaced the busted front diff with a new set of diff gears, and from now on it's just going to run on 3S instead of 4S. Both of these will run on the same battery today, and I would say both of these are going to be pretty close. I've made a brand new course just for this video, so let's get these things on the rocks and we'll see how they go. Now the TRX4, of course, is the only vehicle here that has portals, and that really helps with clearance. The start gate there has a little overhang that catches rear diffs, so the TRX4 Sport had no trouble with that. However, here I need to take a big circle to get the thing turned around, and in fact I'm taking the bonus gate here first rather than doing it later. If I had overdrive in the front, I would be able to do a tighter circle and I wouldn't have had to make that decision. But you work with the rig you've got, and a drive on the same course with different trucks will look different. Now there's going through gate 2, and the TRX4 Sport can turn sharply enough around that little corner that it still can take that no trouble. Now the clearance underneath helped it over that rock where a lot of vehicles do high point, but its higher centre of gravity means it tumbles over a little bit more easily than other rigs. I haven't done any mods to the TRX4 Sport yet. It still has sufficient approach and departure angle that even steep rocks like the one it just did were no trouble. And its centre of gravity is low enough that it remains stable throughout. It can high point like any truck though, as you can see here, and that resulted in a gate touch. Bigger tyres would have helped potentially, but really with any truck it's really about picking the best line. Even a truck with very poor clearance can do very well on a course if you know to pick the best line for your rig, and every rig's a little bit different. Now this is a small tight course which favours good steering. It also has a few side hilling sections that are challenging, and some nasty little approaches like the one I'm taking here, where an older style rig probably would have struggled. I don't think any of these today will struggle though. This is now coming around to the last gate. This is coming through gate 9 just before the entry to the granite boulders and the long bridge. This is actually quite a challenging section, and I built this 4 or 5 years ago. I think this little section here was one of the first things I built out here. And a lot of rigs couldn't actually do it, they'd get stuck. Now see how that left wheel was hanging over the back there? It still pulled itself forward and finished well composed. That was a score of -12 and 2.5 minutes. Now we're on to the GS02F, and see how the body just flips up. It's so easy to flip on and off. It's a feature I really quite like about that. The gatekeeper sharing the same kind of design actually. I'm quite a fan. I'm running the same 3S battery on all 3 trucks here today. Well, on both trucks I should say. Now this one doesn't have portals, and with straight axles it's a bit more of a difficult start, and you'll see it scrabble a bit here for traction as the back diff drags a little on that starting rock, and the TRX4 Sport had no trouble there. However, you'll see how the aggressive overdrive on this means I didn't have to reverse, I didn't have to take any big loops, and you wouldn't even know that that was a challenging section of rock. That's the power of overdrive, one of the 2 main advantages of overdrive. The other one being that, in fact right here, you can use it to pull the rig around. Even though I needed a reverse, you wouldn't have pulled that off with the Sport. Now the approach angle on the GS02F leaves a little to be desired. I think the bull bar can be pulled in a little bit, but we still end up with a truck that gets a little stuck here and there. But that's okay. This is a very lightweight rig. A better line there would have made that a bit of a smoother drive, but not to worry, we can flip it back on its wheels. Maybe it'll cost a reverse or 2, but we can get it back around, reverse it in, and then reattempt that. However, there's a problem here. Oh, you're kidding. I can't recommend the Gmade. The diffs are not strong enough. Consider that the Sendero and the Gen 8 V2 both have been my test subjects for numerous tests on these rocks. On 3S, I haven't held back. Nothing's broken on those trucks, but the GS02F has broken twice on the front diff now. This is a real weak spot. Now, before we call it a day here, there is another factor to consider here. Those were kits, this is not. This is, of course, the Sendero HD, and it cost the same as these kits as a ready to run, which means you get the radio, you get the motor, you get the servo, you get the ESC, all in the box. We're going to throw in a third one to the mix now, the Sendero. It's a cheap and cheerful performer, and it has not broken yet. So let's see how it does on my new test course. I'll see you out there. And now we have the Sendero, also with straight axles, no portals, which means we had to scrabble a bit for traction, but then it was straight up and forward. Now, although I have an overdrive on this one that's similar to the GS02F, sometimes you pick a line or you find yourself on a section of rock, you just need to take the extra circle. Well, that's okay. Straight back through the next gate and around, no trouble at all. These tyres, like on the GS02F, performed very well. In fact, all three OEM tyres on these three different trucks here are very good performers. You see my tyre test, my recent tyre test series, to see just how well all three of these sets went. But overall, for OEM tyres, they're pretty good. We're all spoilt for choice these days. This isn't like the bad old days of a decade ago where the OEM tyres were really just there so they could sell a complete truck, and then you'd pretty much have to go and buy your own. All three of these tyres are great. The Sendero is a beautiful smooth truck to drive with that 5-slot motor, making low speed control just a silky smooth experience every time. I also find this truck is quite easy to get back onto its feet if it rolls. The body shape is good, and it almost never gets stuck on its roof. It's very much an advantage when you're driving a truck on course. The controller is an old style on this Sendero, but it's very functional, it's comfortable, and it's lightweight, and it matches the truck just fine. I really expected to be upgrading a lot of the components in this thing, but I haven't. And you see that then? Other trucks might have got stuck on their roof, but it just didn't quite want to go all the way upside down, which is great. You can always get it back up otherwise. Yeah, I didn't have to upgrade any of the electronics in this thing. It's still using the stock servo, stock ESC, stock motor, stock radio. It's quite impressive, honestly. I think it might be the only ready-to-run vehicle I have that I've not even got a desire to upgrade it. It just is so beautifully matched from front to tail. The whole truck is just, it's a joy to use. And every time I pick up the radio for the Sendero after I've driven something else, I'm just reminded all over again how nice it is to drive with this beautiful 5-slot or 5-pole motor. A motor type which I do recommend for the GS02F, incidentally. More on that in a minute. So that was the bonus gate for the Sendero, and we are coming up to the end of our course. I think this ended up being 6 reverses in total, and we had a few gate touches. Well, I expect the GS02F would have had no trouble here either, honestly. It has a very nice undercarriage. But see how it fell off there? Older trucks would have just taken a tumble. This newer generation from the last few years, these trucks just stay planted, and it's a joy to drive. So that was a score of -19. Let's start with the disappointment first. The Gmade GS02F with its brand new diff gear in the front did not survive long on the course. Oh no, I'm wrong. Good, I want to be wrong. Okay, so it was the pin. I really want to like the GS02F, but I've had 2 driveline failures. I built my first model in 1994. I've been building models for long enough that I know what I'm doing, and I still make mistakes, sure, but I was pretty thorough with this thing. 2 driveline failures in 2 drives is not so good. It's a real shame because this is otherwise a beautiful truck. It costs the same as the TRX4, plus whatever electronics you choose to put in, so that's up to you, and you can do it cheap. You get a pretty nice rig all around. But the drivetrain is, it's lagging behind the others. This is what I would have expected maybe a decade ago. I don't have breakages like this on my other trucks. If you get a GS02F, you are buying a very capable rig. The powertrain in this thing would be what you want. Get a 16-turn 5-slot 540 or a 13 or 12-turn 550, and you will have just the right motor for the GS02F. And you'll still be able to run it on 3S, and it won't be too much for it. Otherwise, this is an absolutely stellar truck, apart from the driveline weaknesses. If you're looking for just one crawler that is extremely capable on the rocks, comes with some extras, is well made and performs well, the Sendero HD would be my recommendation. The TRX4 Sport is a brilliant trail truck with some modifications. You've got the overdrive, the underdrive. You can muck around with cutting weight and all the rest of it. You can turn this into a decent comp truck. It's very popular for that reason, and its driveline is very strong. But for a general basher and trail truck, this is the best choice of these three trucks. And if you want a kit and you want to stick your own electronics in, this is easily the best performer out of the box of the three. No question about it. The Gmade GS02F is my easy decision for this. For just a plain rock crawler, this is a really good machine. As long as you keep in mind that the diff gears, and only the diff gears, being cast aren't particularly strong. Now, as soon as I find out if someone's released a steel machine set of gears for these things, I'll recommend them, I'll tell everyone about them, and I'll buy them straight away, because that will make this into my favorite crawler of all time. It's that good. Because of its weakness though, this keeps things interesting. The Sendero HD is a great pick for out of the box. The Traxxas TRX4 Sport is my trail pick. If this has been useful, please throw me a like, and thank you so much for joining me today for this little chat. I'll see you next time on RC-TNT.